Speed pads are definitely something that have risen a lot of popularity recently, and there are so many to choose from that are really decent, and today we're gonna look at all of these. But before we do that, I wanted to mention that only about 20% of you guys watching are subscribed to my channel, so if you're enjoying the content, definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell right next to it. And as a quick disclaimer, some of these pads were actually sent out to me, but as you know, that will not affect my opinion on these products whatsoever. Getting into one of the most spoken about pads in our scene, the 4114 AERO. It did come in two different designs. It is currently sold out. 4114 is a company made by two Fortnite pros called Elevate and Seize. I know that Seize is still very prominent in the zero build scene, and after having spoken quite a bit to Elevate, I also know how passionate he actually is about aiming itself. The main thing that really stands out with them is their marketing, but when it comes to the mouse pads, the size of 530 by 490 is also very unique, and I think that this extra width is definitely appreciated in the aiming community. Now, with my review unit that I have here, I do actually have quite the QC issue with the surface texture here, but as far as I know, this has been completely fixed now, so I don't think that this can be an issue in the future with their further versions or limited editions that they're gonna do. I also have some QC issues here on my base, but other than that, this is your typical enthusiast mouse pad. It's shipped flat, it spots a pour on base, and this pad is on the thinner end at around 3.3 millimeters. It is definitely a bit more of a textured speed pad because it uses this spandex material, which also is the reason that it actually is rather speedy. I personally had no issues with this mouse pad at all in game, and I really did enjoy it. Because the pad is really thin, there's not much to press into, but it's not the firmest pad in the entire world. Overall, it is still very consistent, and I didn't have any issues at all. And in terms of speed, this sits right in between a Hayate Otsu soft and a Raiden mid. So if your raw aiming is really good, I can definitely see you profiting from a pad like this. For me personally, sometimes I did lack a bit of control, so I would actually prefer something like the Hayate Otsu. Getting into a pad that is rarely ever spoken about, the Strikepad by Fantech. I did actually want the Strikepad Pro with the new alpha cell base that they use that they call Strike Cell, but for whatever reason that could not be shipped to my country. I guess good mousepad tech is simply illegal in Switzerland. So this normal Strikepad spots a default rubber base, and the pad that this reminds me the most of is the Fanatic Jet, and in basically every category I highly prefer this over the Fanatic Jet. This mousepad has never gotten dirty on me, it doesn't leave any stains, it doesn't feel wavy whatsoever on my copy. It's just this very consistent, super duper fast speed pad. With something like donuts or dots, this almost feels uncontrollable. This is definitely a glass pad that you can roll up. If you want this pure raw aim mouse pad that isn't a hard glass pad and is also much more affordable, definitely look into this. I think that many aimers that want to put their raw aiming to a test can definitely profit from this. It also is 490 by 420, so that is a perfect size in my opinion. Could be cool if they can do a square pad in the future, since this can be rolled up and shipping won't be that crazy expensive. So if they want to cater more to the Twitter aimers, go do that. I personally am not really a glass pad fan, so I'm also not really a fan of this pad because it's just that fucking fast. But if you want something that's just pure speed, balls to the walls, get this thing. Or if a rubber base is simply not good enough for you because you're that baller, the new Artisan Shidenkai is also definitely worth looking into. Now, this is the Shidenkai V2, which definitely isn't as uncontrollable as the V1 as I've heard so far. And also the durability should be insanely improved, and I haven't heard about any Shidenkai V2s actually degrading over time so far on people. And compared to the Strikepad, this actually does feel pretty similar in overall speed, but I would say that the Shidenkai V2 is actually more controlled. Whilst the Strikepad has this insanely floaty feeling, the Shidenkai V2 is something that I can still find control on and actually enjoy using. Especially if you use pad skates on this pad, I can see you getting some stopping power out of this pad, as I can definitely feel right now as I'm flicking here. But on the Strikepad, that is definitely a different story. You definitely have more of a floaty, ice skatey feeling. This pad comes in white, black, and also this tie-dye orange, which of course is 490 by 420. And I definitely would recommend getting the mid version because of the way that they've done this surface now. When going for the X-Soft version with this firm surface, the X-Soft just doesn't do anything for you. It basically just worsens your experience. And so far, everybody has been telling me or other people on Twitter that you should go for the mid version just because it's that much more consistent and it just feels weird having a hard surface on a soft base. So the X-Soft doesn't feel anything like a Raiden X-Soft or anything like that. It's not plush at all. Just go for the mid. And I do want to mention that these mid artisan pads with the normal pour-on surface that they've been using this entire time can definitely slide around on your desk. I personally didn't really have an issue with it, but of course it did slide around on my desk more than other pads, like rubber pads, of course. But if you do have a desk that is actually treated, you can just put some drops of water underneath the area of your mouse pad and then it won't slide around. But if you still want an artisan pad that is also very speedy but more conventional, there's also the Artisan Raiden. The Raiden is only available in this coffee brown color. It is available in the mid and X-Soft. Most people that I have heard of go for the X-Soft version. Now, I'm personally not an X-Soft fan whatsoever because I am a boomer that kind of digs into his pads by accident. So with this mid version, same thing again. Pad could slide around on your desk. The difference in overall speed between my Raiden mid and this Shidenkai is pretty difficult to tell apart. I'm not gonna lie. The huge difference between these two will be the surface feel, obviously, with the Shidenkai feeling much more hard and like it actually feels like a piece of silicone when gliding across it with your hand, whilst the Raiden is this conventional cloth pad that just happens to be very, very fast. I personally prefer the feel of the Raiden, and I think that many people would prefer the feel of it, but the issue that I have with my Raiden in this very dry and cold environment of mine here in Switzerland is that I have a lot of static electricity buildup on this pad. Basically, all of my skates in-game feel like they're scratching on the pad, but they're actually not. Despite having the most rounded and most perfect skates on the entire market, because of that static electricity buildup that I have here, it constantly saps the surface and it feels like I am scratching something on my pad, and it is unplayable for me personally. So if you want something that is similar to a Raiden and are afraid of having those issues, I would definitely recommend the Infinite Speed by InfinityMice. This is their new Speed V2, and honestly, it just feels like a better Raiden. I have no static electricity issues on this pad, and despite the weave being quite a bit different, it feels very similar in game, especially because this mid version is still a bit more thick and also has a bit of plush, whilst this mid version on the Raiden has basically nothing. The Infinite Speed V2 feels a tiny bit slower, and you do have a tiny bit of bass to actually push into. So I think that for most people, this is actually a perfect alternative and probably also a preferred pad by many. It's also quite a bit cheaper to get it shipped to your place unless you live in Japan. So in the position that my Raiden is currently at, I would definitely recommend the Infinite Speed V2 over it. But that is only until they do their new Raiden V2, which is gonna come out this year. And if you didn't know, Artisan are gonna do new revisions of almost all of their pads this year, so definitely keep your eye out on that. I also quickly wanted to touch on my Hayate Otsu mid just because I've used it that much, as you can see. The Hayate Otsu mid, I wouldn't really call a speed pad, but honestly, because it's that firm with this kind of hybrid surface, it is pretty darn fast. So if you want something that is a bit more controlled than the pads that I've talked about right before, so if you want something that's really good for tracking because of this mid bass and very consistent experience, and you want something that is more textured, which this Hayate Otsu surface definitely is, I can definitely recommend it. This is one of my all-time favorite pads, and I'm glad that I got this mid version last year. Super consistent, you can still get some control out of it just because it is a tiny bit of a slower surface, and overall just a really go-to pad. A pad that I am not gonna go in depth on but wanted to mention is the Ninja Speed by Kurosun. I did never review this pad, and I also will never review this initial first batch because this was just such a weird experience for me because the surface feel changed so much over time, and because this version is never going to be sold again, I'm just going to tell you, wait until Kurosun release new mouse pads if you are at all interested in this pad. They're gonna do a ton of really cool shit, so keep your eye open for those new pads. Now last and definitely least is the Gamesense Lidar. This is also a rubber based pad, 500 by 500. It is shipped flat for whatever reason. This pad is currently being sold for $25 over on Gamesense, probably just because this doesn't have anime titties. The overall surface feels very wavy or inconsistent on my desk, mainly because it is so thin to the point where I can kind of feel the rubber base underneath it. It is definitely the lowest pad out of this entire lineup. It's really nothing crazy. It is just a mouse pad of all time. Honestly, this feels like a glorified IKEA pad. So if I were Gamesense, I would probably focus on doing a different type of fabric, on definitely a different base or just a thicker base in general, because this just overall doesn't feel good to me. And because I know Gamesense can do so many cool designs, I would definitely recommend them to do a new surface, really cool design, make it available in 490 and 420. Definitely thicken the base or do something about this, because this does not feel good. So if they want to kind of revive that potential that the Raider had back in the days and want to do it on a speed pad, now is the time with new materials like EPDM or SCR sponges or Japanese rubber foam or whatever there's out there. Now is the time to try and innovate and do something cool and also make it affordable, while still making it interesting with designs or different color stitching or whatever. And honestly, that's already it. If you want to hear about my opinion, I personally really like the InfinityMice Infinite Speed V2. I have always wanted a good Raiden, and I just never got to have that experience despite owning a Raiden Xsoft before. I don't fuck with Xsoft. A Raiden Mid that I have now, which I can't play because of static electricity issues. So to finally have something that is that experience that I have been looking for is freaking awesome to me. I also really loved playing on this Kurosun Ninja whilst it was still in a good condition. So if they're doing a similar type of surface that is not heat treated to death in the future, I would definitely look out for it, because it's still very speedy, but it has a surprising amount of stopping power being at that speed. I also really do like the AERO by 4114, but I do think that they have a lot more potential, and I'm definitely sure that they're gonna do some more awesome stuff later this year. But yeah, if you've at all been enjoying this content and are interested in Infuse's peripheral reviews, definitely hit that subscribe button and the bell right next to it. Thank you for enduring these mousepad videos back to back together with me. I've got a lot of mice that I'm gonna cover next, with the main one being the OP18K, which is my current new main, and I will also be stepping into reviewing keyboards very soon. Other than that, that's about it for this video. So yeah, see you guys soon. Like and sub, and peace out.